So welcome back, Adobe Max 2017. We are here at the Dell FMC campus. We want to thank Dell for having FMC here. We're obviously here to provide all of you with the expertise of all our partnered instructors, our master instructors, and here to do hands-on sessions. This session coming up is with Justin Seeley, and it is don't just build, draw.
There you go.
So without further ado, everybody come on in, take a seat, take a machine, and Justin Seeley, everyone.
Thank you. So, hi everybody. My name is Justin Seeley, as Paul said, and I run my own company, Seeley Training. I'm here on behalf of FMC here at Adobe Max 2017 in Las Vegas, and we're going to be working with Illustrator today, doing some freehand drawing with a mouse, believe it or not. And so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to create a new document. It doesn't really matter how big or how small, just create a brand new document. And I'll just do a print document, letter sized. And once you have your document open, you may see some of this interface stuff like libraries or something in your way. If you do, you can just collapse that panel right up there in the top right-hand corner. And what I want you to start off by doing is coming over here inside of the tools panel and finding this tool right here. It's called the Shaper tool. And this is something that was introduced in a recent update, probably a year or two ago in Illustrator. And this is a gesture-based drawing tool that not a lot of people have started using. If you've ever used the Shape Builder tool, have you guys ever used that before? It's a really cool tool that allows you to kind of visually subtract and add shapes together. This one is much the same way. You can see when you select it that it gives you a little introduction here on how to use it. And so when you close that, you can just start drawing. So if you want to make a circle, you just click and draw a circle like this, and Illustrator will automatically turn that into a complete perfect circle, which is awesome. Then you can start adding things like ellipses on top of that. And if we're doing a drawing, chances are we want that drawing to be the same on both sides. So what we can do is just take this, select that guy, and then we can duplicate it over. Something like that. And then to reflect it, we can just right-click, and we can go down to Transform, Reflect, and the vertical option should work just fine. We'll hit OK. And so now we've got almost like a little frog going on already. And so as you can see, I don't have to build this thing using regular shapes. I'm just drawing. And so I can take this Shaper tool again and make just a really ugly looking circle. It doesn't matter. Even with a mouse, you can draw precision shapes with a mouse, which is super awesome. And that's why I like this tool so much. Now, let's say that I wanted the head and the body to be connected with each other, right? So all I got to do is just take this and just scribble across, and it's automatically going to join those together. They're now one big shape. And then I can come over to the swatches, get my selection tool, select that guy, and we can turn him green. And you can see there that we've got the ability to go in and then change these little guys too. And so you can see the beginnings that I'm getting with my frog. And then we'll come out, do some eyes like that. Let's do a better eyeball than that. That's terrible. There we go. Oh, not a square. There we go. And then I'm going to kind of marry this with the pencil tool. This is another tool that a lot of people traditionally have found to be really awful. Like, people are afraid of it because it's been really bad. So I'm going to press down the Shift key on my keyboard and then press the letter, whoops. No, I do not want to do that. Press down the Shift key and then select the letter N as in Nancy. And that's going to give you, just press N, no Shift key. And that's going to give you the pencil tool. The pencil tool traditionally, especially when you're drawing with a mouse, has been really hard to use because it creates all these jagged edges, it's not smooth, and people get frustrated. When you're drawing with a tablet, of course, it works a lot better. But how can we make the mouse perform better? Because we can't all afford drawing tablets, right? So if you double-click the pencil tool, it's actually going to come up with something called the pencil tool options. And one of the things that they've added in the last couple of years is something called the fidelity slider. Now, it's always been there, but they've reconfigured it so that it actually works, which is awesome. Previously, the fidelity slider, you could drag that thing back and forth and it was like, okay, what's it doing? So now it actually does something. So drag that all the way over to the right to where it says smooth. And now when I hit OK, even if I have a mouse or I'm using a trackpad, since I've cranked that over to smooth, all I have to do is just draw something like that. See, that's not perfect, right? That's not It's got some jagged edges right there at the top of the curve. When I let go of my mouse, it automatically smooths that out, makes it a nice smooth curve all the way around. So just drawing, even with a mouse, not that hard to do anymore in Illustrator. So let me undo that, and I'll get rid of this too. And let's stick with the pencil tool for just a minute, because I'm going to show you how great this thing is. Double click it again. And one of the things that I find interesting about this tool now is this little option right here called close paths when ends are within X amount of pixels. Now by default that's set to 15 pixels. That's a really big distance if you think about it, right? You can crank that down if you want, and that means you're going to have to be more precise. But if you want to, you can actually take that up too. So I could say something like 20 pixels and then hit OK. Now when I'm drawing with the pencil tool, when I get within 20 pixels, watch, look at that. See how far away I am from the endpoint? Now I've already got the little circle to close the path. If I let go of my mouse, it automatically closes that path for me. The other great thing about it is if you're not happy with how that works, all you have to do is come right here on top of it, and you can drag across and reshape the drawing. So as long as you're on top of the path, you can go back in and edit how that path goes. So you can go in and clean up or add to your existing shape very easily. That's something that you haven't been able to do traditionally. You've had to go in with the direct selection tool or use anchor points and handles, and it's very mechanical. Whereas if you're an Illustrator person, a person that draws by hand, you would rather just make a stroke and have it work. So, all right, let's draw something for real. So I'm going to take the brush tool now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of simulate hand lettering. Hand lettering is not something that I do. It's not something I'm good at. It's not something that I would even suggest that I even try. But in Illustrator, I have really cool capabilities for creating something that looks very hand lettering-esque. So I'm just going to draw kind of like my name out here, okay? Something like that. And it just looks like a kid scribbled that. It doesn't look like much of anything. But if I select this, I can come in here, zoom in, and grab something called the width tool. And with the width tool selected, oops, it's not gonna let me do that, I forgot. Pencil tool, not brush tool, Justin, sorry. All right, pencil tool again, that's my bad, guys. So, something like that, oh, that's not good. There we go. And complete it, okay. Now I grab the width tool, zoom in on this guy, and pan over. Okay, so here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna enlarge the curve right there. I'm going to bring that in. See how I can click and drag those little points? So I'm going to taper that like that. And then I'll come here and I can enlarge this piece a little bit. Now this looks a little bad, so what I'm gonna do is just delete that and redo it. Pencil tool. There we go. All right. And so grab the width tool again. Increase that size if I can get it. There we go. And then these are just regular strokes. So you can manipulate the stroke type right here. You can change the cap. So I can make that a square cap since I want it to look almost like a flat edge marker. And then you can increase or decrease the size of the stroke. So if I want to take that down, just take it down a little bit, something like that. Same way with the rest of this. Take that down maybe to about half a point. No, 3/4 of a point. That looks better. Okay. And so you have the ability just to manipulate all of this, and it all started with just a simple pencil drawing where you just did that with your mouse. Now, granted, this would be a little bit smoother if I was on that machine back over there, which if you guys haven't seen that thing, the canvas, I highly suggest you go look at that because it's a really great product for drawing. You can draw right on the screen. It's got a pen that's very, very touch sensitive, pressure sensitive, and that's where I'll be over there drawing later today, and you can see some of this stuff the same way I'm doing it here. It works a lot better, but even with a mouse, it's not that bad. Okay. Now, as far as brushes go, brushes in Illustrator are a really great thing too that I don't think get used enough, really. And inside of the brushes panel over here, you got the defaults, and the defaults are, they're whatever. There's some good brushes nested in this little guy right here, the brush library. If you go down to the Wacom 6D brushes, the 6D art pens are one of my favorites. Because you bring these up, and it's like a big selection of calligraphy brushes and hard edge brushes and things like that. And so you can hover over them and you can see the different names that they give them. But I would suggest just grab one and then paint with it. So just grab one, grab your paintbrush, and then just come out here, and I'll just do a quick drawing. And let me zoom out so you guys can see what I'm drawing here. All right, and I'll switch between different ones so that I get different looks. Something like that. Now the nose is probably a little too big, so what we can do is take that down. There we go. And then switch back to the brush. And what I like about these is that it simulates pressure. So some of the strokes will be harder than others, some of them will be bigger, smaller. There we go. So we'll just draw like a little cartoon guy. And you can see that gives me the ability to add depth and texture. It's really nice. And I'll just complete that like that. And then when we're finished with that, we can use our layers over here. And I can create a new layer, drag it beneath. And this is where I can start painting colors, right? So I can grab my brush. And I actually like switching to the blob brush tool when I'm doing large swatches of color. This is another tool that I don't think a lot of people use all that often. And I usually switch my brush back to a circular brush here because it's just a little bit easier to control. And so I've created a new layer beneath this one. If I want to start adding color, I'll grab a swatch. So let's say this guy is going to have like really crazy red hair. And I'll just come in, whoops. So blob brush, let's take the stroke away. There we go. And I'll decrease the size of the brush. You can do that with the left bracket key on your keyboard. Right bracket key increases the size of the brush. And so look, I can just paint right behind this thing. Just like that. See, I'm painting over it, but since the layer is underneath there, it just goes right underneath it. So it's almost like a coloring book, which is really awesome. So I don't have to be accurate with this. That's the one thing I like. I don't have to be accurate at all. And I can just paint all of this in. The blob brush is going to turn this into one gigantic thing. And so once I have that all colored in, it reads it. I can go back in and clean up any of the areas that need to be cleaned. Kind of like that. And if I need to get rid of something, I just press the Shift key and the letter E. That gives me the eraser tool. And I can zoom in and look at all the areas that I might need to clean up with that thing. Again, same brush technique applies. Go right there. And whoops, didn't mean to erase my eye. And then we'll pan over. Erase that. Now you notice that it's erasing everything as I do that. And that's one of the things that's kind of a bummer about the eraser tool. When you don't have anything selected, it's going to erase everything on the canvas, which is kind of annoying. So when we use Command or Control Z to undo that, we need to switch to the selection tool. You can do that temporarily by pressing the Control key on your keyboard and then selecting whatever object you need. And I know I have the right one selected because I have red as my foreground color. And so then I can use the eraser tool to clean those up, and I don't mess with the overall black outline around the outside, right? Okay. And then of course this is all vector. That's one of the other great things about Illustrator. No matter how big or how small I draw it, I can always increase or decrease the size. Now the bummer part here is that when you do that, you get these strokes that look really awkward when they scale up. So what you're going to do is you can go in to the object menu. And let's see here. Whoops. Let's undo that. Sorry, go to the File menu. And inside of the File menu, did they move it? It's not in there. Okay. We can do it from Preferences then. How about that? Edit, Preferences, and then we'll go to General. Inside of the General dialog box, there's this little thing right here that says Scale, Strokes, and Effects. If you click on that and hit OK, now when you make a selection of this guy, use the Shift key, blow him up, everything maintains its aspect ratio, all of its strokes, everything like that. And so it still maintains all of its crisp, clean edges because it is a vector piece of artwork, meaning it's made up of mathematical formulas as opposed to pixels. So we don't have to worry about DPI or anything else when we're in Illustrator, which is super good. All right. So we'll get rid of that. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to show you, because I talked about the shape builder earlier, and it is a very mechanical way of doing it, but they've added in the ability to freehand draw with the shape builder as well, which I find to be really cool. So let's use the ellipse tool, and I'll draw out a perfect circle, okay? And then we're going to go up to the edit menu. We're going to choose copy, edit, paste in front, and then just switch to the selection tool. And we're going to resize this around the center point. So we're going to use the shift key and the alt key and go in just a little bit. And that's going to create an object that looks, and I'll just use that so you can see it creates this little shape here. And so what I'm going to do is switch to the shape builder tool. You can do that by pressing shift and the letter M as in Mary on your keyboard. And then see how it highlights? All I have to do here is hold down the Option or Alt key to knock out the middle, and then click the ring, and that creates one solid ring. All right? Now I'm going to move this over, and we're going to create almost like an Olympic ring type effect here. So I'm going to duplicate this by holding down Option or Alt, dragging it over, and then do the same thing beneath it. Something kind of like that. And so we're going to create a linking rings effect here. And this is something that a lot of people, they look at it and they're like, man, that's really like complicated. And it's actually not, because you're just going to use one single tool to do this. You're going to use the shape builder tool. And so with the shape builder tool, when you have everything selected, that's the key. Everything has to be selected on the artboard when you're doing this. And so now all I have to do is draw around the edges of this thing to make it interlock like I want. So right here, let's say that I want this to go across right here. Just click and drag, and that turns into one single shape. Let's go ahead and change colors for a second. Let's do something that's a little bit easier to see, maybe. Let's convert all, there we go. Now you guys can see it a little bit better. All right, so see how I made that go across there? Let's say that I want it to go under this part, right? I just click and drag right here to draw across it, and now that goes underneath. If I want this to go over, do the same thing. This to go under, same thing. And you can just interlock these however you want. So here I'll just go over, and then this last one here I'll go under, something like that. And so now I've created, it's almost like a Celtic knot or Olympic rings type thing. And then the best part is these are all individual objects, so I can come in here and I can change the individual pieces so that they have their own unique colors, and they interlock just like that. And so if you think about it from a perspective of you don't necessarily have to be the best artist, all you have to do is visualize what you need to create. And you can use things like the shaper tool, you can use things like the shape builder, you can use brushes, pencils, all of that stuff in conjunction with one another, and you can really create some complex artwork that you probably wouldn't be able to create otherwise. And it's all simply by using gesture-based drawing and stuff like that. So we'll do one final demo here. And so I'm going to start off with a rectangle. So just a simple rectangle out there in the middle. So we're just going to draw out a rectangle. And then I'm going to draw out an ellipse. And I'll position it so the ellipse is right there on the corner. And then I'll duplicate that ellipse, holding down the Option, or excuse me, the Alt key, dragging that across. There we go. And then we will also take the polygon tool, and then as I'm drawing the polygon tool out, I can use the down arrow key, and that's going to take away sides. And if I want a perfect triangle, I hold down Shift, and I'll release that, then move the triangle up, and then meet right there. Duplicate that, Option or Alt, across the way. Okay, so now I've got this kind of like complex shape going on. And so what I want to do is take all of this, and you can see all the different outlines of the shape, especially if I go to something like yellow, you can see all of the shapes. You can also just go into the wireframe mode if you wanted to. You can go to View and choose Outline. And so you can always see the different shapes no matter what color you have. It'll always give you kind of like this bare bones skeleton look of what you're working with. And then you can jump out of that anytime you want in the view menu by choosing GPU preview or pressing Control Y on your keyboard. And so you jump back out, and then the shape builder allows you to draw across this thing. So just draw across and combine those shapes together. Hold down the Alt key and draw across and subtract those shapes. And you see we're drawing like a little mouse. Not the mouse that would sue me if I said his name, but just a regular mouse. And then I can switch over to the direct selection tool. It's a white arrow. Press the letter A on your keyboard if you want to get a hold of that guy. And then we're going to hold down Shift, and we're just going to click all these little anchor points. And why am I doing that? Because you see these little dots that pop up? Those little dots are rounded corners. So I've used triangles and basic rectangles so far, but if I take these little dots and I click and I drag in, I can round those edges off significantly. And then I can use things like the pen tool, and I know everybody's scared of the pen tool, but the pen tool actually has a different use other than that crazy like click and drag method that everybody thinks of. You can come in here and hold down the Option key on Mac, Alt key on PC, and you can go right to the edge. See this? See that little barbell thing that pops up? That allows you to click and bend a path. And so you can just bend any of these you want. And I might go right here and maybe bulge this out a little bit. There we go. I don't really like that. Let's undo. And maybe bend that in a little bit. There we go. Okay. And then let's change that to black. You can kind of get the idea of what I'm going for. So now, last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pencil tool and I'm just going to draw the shape of the face that I want to make. So I'm going to draw an arc here. Remember, I changed the fidelity earlier, so all these curves that I'm drawing here, they should, in theory, smooth themselves out. So then we're going to go up and around, kind of create a crown around the outside. Okay? So I've got my basic shape of the outline that I want. And then I'll use the Shift key here to select both the shapes that I just drew. And then we're going to use something called the Pathfinder. And this is another thing that a lot of people get confused with. But it's basically like the shape builder as a button as opposed to a brush. So we're going to go to the window menu, choose Pathfinder. And when the Pathfinder is open, we're going to use this little guy right here called Divide. And what that's going to do is it's just going to split those paths with the outline that I just drew. And so once I do that, see how the extra handles on the outside go away? So now these are two separate shapes. So I can select that, and I'll keep it black. And then this one here, let's change that one to something like that. See what I mean? And then last thing, we'll just add some eyes. And we'll duplicate that. Oops. No. Escape. I want the selection tool. There we go. Move this guy over. And again, we can reflect this easily. Right-clicking, transform, reflect, hit OK. And now we'll take those. There we go. And I'm going through this really fast. If I was doing this at home or for a client or something like that, I would obviously be a little bit more careful. But for this, it's just very quick, very easy. All right. There we go. And draw on a nice big smile. And then switch the stroke on that to black. Increase the size quite a bit. And then to make this look a little bit better, I'd use the width tool again. So we're putting everything together. So I would come in, zoom in on this guy, and right here, just kind of give that a little bit of taper. And then right here, see, that doesn't look good. That's too hard of an edge. So that's, again, in the stroke options, we would just change the cap to a round cap and then shrink that down just a little bit. And then we'll wrap up with the eyes. Something like that. This looks more like a South Park character than it does Mickey Mouse, but you get the idea. There we go. And I messed up my mouth. Let's redo that. All right. So there we go. Not the best looking mouse in the world, but it'll do. So, as you can see, it's really easy to draw in Illustrator, even if you're not the best artist in the world. And you can use all of these different tools to create what you need to create. And so, my suggestion to everybody is just to put some stuff down on the canvas, use these different tools to figure out, which ones work best for you, because not all of them work good for everybody. And so, for me personally, I like to use the pencil tool and the shape builder tool a lot. A lot of people like to use the shaper tool with the brush tool. Totally up to you. But the key here is just to draw. Don't just click and drag out rectangles all the time. Draw. Use your pen, use your mouse, use your trackpad, and use natural gestures, because that's what is going to make the best artwork in Illustrator. There's also features in here that would trace things that you bring in, that you draw on paper. And I actually have a class on image tracing that's going to be available on LinkedIn Learning, so that's lynda.com or LinkedIn Learning. And so it shows you how to use the image trace feature to take something like a sketch and convert that into usable vector art. And so definitely check that out if you can. I'm going to do a presentation here on Friday that's a graphic design workflow, and we're going to be doing some image trace in that as well. So I'll show you how to convert a hand-drawn sketch into vector artwork and then implement that. We're going to create an Alice in Wonderland storybook, which is going to be pretty cool. All right? So again, this was Illustrator, Don't Just Build, Draw. My name is Justin Seeley on behalf of FMC and Dell here at Adobe Max 2017. Thanks for coming by and joining in, and I hope to see you again real soon.